going to talk about habits. But the first thing I want to really bring up is something that I repeatedly see in the transmission of messages from V50, which is this, and it's kind of been picked up along the way. It's stop and reach out to somebody else. And I want to talk about this inside of the thought of habits. So I want to tell you that every time you see that, your brain takes that in and it's sitting in your head. What you do with it is a different story, but it's a consistent message. And I truly believe that that's one reason why this organization or this company does so well, because it keeps saying, this is business, we have that, but this is what good people do. Reach out and call somebody. You don't know what kind of an impact that makes. Or receiving calls, like Layden said that he received a call earlier from somebody who was with V50 at an earlier period of time. And Layden, can you just share with everybody like how that felt or what that was like?
Yeah. I was talking to Dr. Allison earlier. Just what's amazing, and if you participated in Dr. Allison's event, it was either 3 or 4 ago when we talked about the 4 or 5 chemicals in the brain that make up how you feel and act and things that you do, whether it's good emotion, bad emotion, and everything in between. And it's amazing how just a not so good email or a bad phone call can trigger stress and trigger some anxiety and throw off your whole day. And that's how my morning started, which is a whole other story. But then I got this call out of the blue. Some of you might remember Kyle Jekulek from the early days of V50, and he's been trying to launch his business for years. And he just called out of the blue and he said, I never called you on your 3-year anniversary. Just wanted to congratulate you and the community, what you all are doing. Most businesses don't last that long. And what you guys have been able to do and keep together is just remarkable. And then that switched like my whole, mindset for the next half hour. And then here we are. So I'm in a very happy mood right now.
That's good. So let's keep you happy. That's my plan. Also, I just want to know that in part of what I do for work, I'm trained to observe. And what I've just observed, which was magical, was Randy is sitting like he's going to take the bus somewhere after he is positive that the time is really true. And what he did was he reached back into his virtual background and pulled out of that little bus stop, he pulled an entire folder out or a file. I'm like, that is real magic right there. There you go, right there. Incredible. But it came out of like a booth. In any case, so let's talk about habits. All right. Habits are really important, obviously, because we're very much built on our habits. So we're going to go through, define what it is, how we got there, what this is made up of, how to get rid of bad habits. But I also want to teach you how to create habits, because the creation of habits, that is paramount to having a really nice, enjoyable, satisfying existence. But what I'd like to start with is I'm going to ask you a question. I just want you to make notes somewhere in front of yourself. Don't share it. All right. Not yet. All right. What I'd like to know is, how do you see yourself? Just a few words. Write it down off the top of your head. No thinking. Off the top of your head, how do you see yourself? Okay. Terrific. Those are some long words, guys. Those are like $1 million words. All right, so let's talk about what a habit is. A habit is very specifically an automatic reaction to a specific event or a specific situation. So it's literally an automatic response, okay, or reaction to a specific situation. Know that that's what it is, because when you do that in your head, you now understand it very literally. So it's not habits. Oh, they're really bad. I smoke. Habits. It's how I shake the doorknob 15 times to make sure my family is safe in the house. It doesn't take it to an emotional place. Right away, we've started with, what is this very literally? It's a specific reaction to something that happens. That's it. So when Layden talks about, what we call triggers, you see something, you get a phone call, you have a thought, right away, slam, your brain chemistry moves into a place and it starts to dictate certain things to you. So what I'd like to do for a sec is remove the emotion. And that's why I gave you a definition. So habits are awesome. your brain, if your brain was like its own little guy running around or woman or whatever with its own little feet and arms, it would be like having so much fun every time it was confronted with a habit. And the reason why your brain loves habits is because it's easy. It's a no-brainer. It's done it before, it's easy, it's efficient, it's just let's go. There's not a lot of real processing, heavy processing that has to take place when you're confronting or becoming engaged in a habit, all right? It's easy to defer to, all right? And the more time that goes by, the easier it becomes. So you may develop a habit and be doing something in the beginning, and you're kind of pushing your way through it, okay? And you're forcing something into place for whatever reason. But after a while, when it kicks in, it just kicks in and you're free to fly. So they're easy to develop. And this is like the unfortunate side of habits. They're easy to develop, but they're difficult to break, right? And we're gonna smash that open today, all right? I want you to think about the seatbelt law for those of us who happen, just as a happenstance, to be alive in 1984. It's just a thing. It's not ageism, just happened to be there. All right. Before that, does anybody happen to remember what happened in the car before there was a seatbelt law? Anybody remember?
Yeah, I remember riding in the back of my parents' station wagon,
Right.
like in the back.
Oh yeah, me too.
With other kids.
Yeah.
Right.
I don't
Me too.
remember that there was any seatbelt. Like there was no, it's like get in the car. There was
Yeah.
no like buckle up or be safe or any of that. Just get in and hold on.
Right, that's about it. Exactly. That's exactly right. Anybody remember being in the front seat with no seatbelt?
Oh yeah.
Sure.
Right.
Oh, I remember when my baby brother came home from the hospital. We're 5 years apart. They wedged up basically not much more than a box with pillows and stuff in it, but on that hump behind between the two seats, it was a bench seat car, and that's where the baby went.
No car
Right.
seats, no car seats.
No boosters, none of that.
Nope. I
Good,
mean, and
good.
it was a great place for my mom, right? If he cried or something, she could like soothe him. But yeah, he was in a cardboard box in the front seat of the car.
Right, makes total sense, right? Because in that period of time, it made total sense.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
And then they were doing all these studies based on accidents. And in 1984, they said, we're done here. Everybody wears a seatbelt. If you're in the back seat between the ages of, I think, 12 and 14, if you're underneath that, you have to wear a seatbelt. If you are, of a certain size as a baby, you have to be in a car seat. The car seat cannot be facing forward. Like, think about all this material. If you are the age of 7 or 8, depending upon the state, or you are of a certain weight as a child, out to the age of 7 or 8, or that particular weight that they've prescribed, you have to be in a booster seat, which has to be correctly installed. There's no thinking about this at this point, right? But do you remember what it was like to go from there was no seatbelt law to now you have to put on your seatbelt? Could you please tell me what that was like?
Yeah, you always heard that annoying buzzer in the car go off until you clicked the seatbelt together.
Right. It's like you were detonated to blow, right? Exactly. Right. But
Well, and people were apoplectic about, I mean, it reminded me a lot of the pushback I heard about getting vaccinated for COVID.
exactly.
People were like, hey, my body, and I'm, you can't force me to do any of this.
Right.
And if you don't wear a seatbelt, you get a ticket.
Right. Right.
And I'll tell you
People were
something
through the roof about it. Yeah.
even something more stupid, because I have 3 grandchildren. I don't know whether or not everyone is aware of that now, because when my kids were growing up, just like your kids were growing up, you had them with their winter jackets on. Now these kids are no longer allowed to wear winter jackets or any type of jackets in the car seat because they say that's illegal.
That's interesting.
So when it's freezing out, the kids are coming out without any jackets on.
I have to look this up. That's amazing.
That's the
amazing.
truth.
I believe you. But think about this. Look at the emotion that we're experiencing. So now I want to go to the emotional space. When somebody said you have to wear a seatbelt, or you have to listen to that incessant dinging, or you are going to get a ticket, or you will die, I promise. So many people were like, no. And then what they did was they injected fear into the concept. And they were like, no, if I wear a seatbelt and I get stuck in a car after having an accident, I could die in there because I can't get out. we were using emotion to battle emotion. The truth is, it's inconvenient. It's a pain in the neck. Let me just get into my car and drive and leave me alone, right? Things like this thing about winter jackets, like really? So people are gonna be like, they're gonna freeze to death. And that kind of, nullifies the need for a car seat, maybe, I don't know, right? But now we're talking about a lot of emotion. This is why habits are so amazing, all right? So for anybody who doesn't remember, hasn't been here, your brain chemistry does certain things, okay? Everybody likes to hear about dopamine, that's great. Dopamine, it's fun, it's exciting, it wants you to return to something because it was so much fun. That's that chemical. So you have chemicals that are doing good and bad things or making you feel good and bad. A lot of that is emotional. The reaction becomes emotional. It's not based on statistically, this is what we know, and you may not like it. Get rid of your emotions. This is going to make it okay. Once, as a country or different states, they said, okay, you know what? We're going to do the seatbelt thing. Doesn't matter how you feel. You really are getting a ticket. Suddenly it was like, how do I feel about getting a ticket? You know what? Okay, maybe it saved somebody's life. Okay, so like, okay. And we took our emotions and we allowed them to change so that we could be okay. And that's how that law sticks. And now many people get into their car and they put it on automatically. And if somebody gets into the car, within 2 seconds, their belt is not on, we obnoxiously look at them and go, you gonna put on your seatbelt? Did you put your belt in? You need help putting in your belt? That's what happens. You see the shift, but now it's a habit. So we went from having a different habit to having to develop another habit, but there's emotional pushback when you do that. And I don't care what the habit is. It's such a good example, the seatbelt thing in particular, because it's packed with emotion. We didn't really realize that so much in shifting our habit. We were just packed with emotion, and we battle emotion often with emotion, which is not usually very workable. So you should ask yourself, where do these habits come from? And it's very easy to say, oh, it's culture, it's social learning, it's, whatever, right? But habits themselves really aren't, from my point of view, it's an investment. It's deliberate, okay? It's repetitive, it's behavioral. It's something that you're investing yourself in. So let's go to, you want to hang out with a different group of people and they, I don't know, do something that you don't generally do. I don't know, they play pickleball, all right? And it's something that you just have no interest in, but you really like those people. And maybe you want to live a similar life as those people because that works for you. What do? You start doing the very thing that you have no interest in. Why? Because you have a greater emotional investment in something. So now you learn about pickleball and you start playing. And now you're in the ladder or whatever they call it with the pickleball world and you buy pickles. I don't know what to say to you, but you have an investment. And that investment needs to have an ROI. And if it doesn't, you're heading in the wrong direction, right? So I want you to think about this. So that's what habits really are. That's where they come from. It's not an accident. You're not born, like you don't come out, like you're not in utero with a pickleball racket. It's something you have to go do and you have to invest yourself in order for it to occur. Now, sometimes when you're surrounded by something like social learning, when you're surrounded by something, you'll pick those habits up. Oh, my mom smoked and my grandmother smoked and I smoke and we all smoke. Okay, but you have to invest yourself in that. There's nobody that picks up a cigarette and it's easy peasy the first time. At some point, it doesn't feel right because your body is not made to take in smoke. All right, so I can't beat this to death enough. It's an investment. It's deliberate. Okay, it's something that's actionable. And it means that we have something that we want. And that is why we're developing that habit. The byproducts of that habit may be things we don't want, but you set it up because there was something in there that you wanted. It could be as simple as approval. It could be as simple as comfort. It could be as anything. All right. But the byproducts of those habits, that's usually the snag in the conversation. How long does it take to form a habit? All right. There was a book written by a man named Dr. Maltz, M-A-L-Z, if you need to look him up. Okay. He was, I don't know, maybe a psychologist. I don't remember, but he said that it took 21 days. So when you ask everybody, how long does it take to develop a habit? Everybody goes, oh, 21 days. It's not scientifically accurate. Right? He said that based on observing himself and observing his patients. And he said, it seems that it takes 21 days to dissolve an old mental image, which is interesting because they don't dissolve. And that is another glitch in the concept of how to break or develop a new habit. When you haven't, and you've heard me say this before, when you've had an experience, whether it's your experience or somebody else's, and you're getting it on a secondary level, that stays in your head. It just stays. You may not be actively thinking about it, but it's now locked inside of your brain because your brain has experienced this at some level, which is why you can be walking and have a memory from, I don't know, forever ago, like from when you were 3. And you're like, well, I've never even thought about that. Why am I thinking about that now? Because your brain allowed it to come up. That's why something triggered it or whatever it is. So I want you to know that when he said it's 21 days, that's not accurate. And the other thing is he was talking about old mental images dissolving. They don't go away. But that was his understanding and his insight. So that's fine for him. But the science shows us a lot more, and experience shows us a lot more. All right. There was a European Journal of Social Psychology study in 2009. What that said, and this is your accurate info, it takes between 18 to 254 days to develop a new habit. That may sound a little upsetting, but this is really great information. So look at the range, 18 to 254 days. So the average time, okay, of the people that they studied was 66 days. So it takes a good 3 months. Like let's make it more manageable. 66 sounds horrifying, right? It takes a little over 3 months to really probably establish a new habit. All right. That sounds more reasonable. It doesn't sound like fun, but it sounds more reasonable. All right. One of the things that our brain likes, which I told you before, is that our brain likes pleasure, right? We're pleasure driven in many instances. Sometimes we're fear driven also. Like we'll be deterred from something if we're afraid, right? Like don't put your hand on the stove. Why? Because you'll get burned. That's scary enough. I don't want to get burned. I understand the concept, so I don't do it. But I get pleasure in the fact that I'm conducting myself in a way where I don't get burned. So it moves back and forth a little bit. But the big piece here is your mental image. So what Maltz brought up was mental image, right? My big thing about habits is what's your vision? What is your vision for yourself? Well, I asked you, like, how do you see yourself? And you don't have to divulge this here, but how do you see yourself? And I hope you were honest with that. What's the image that you have in your head? Like, what is that? Because that picture drives so much of what we do. So we may think, oh, I have this image of whatever, but if you peel that back, you'll find that there are other images behind it. All right. I was talking to somebody recently and they were talking about, having trouble with all different types of things, their energy, their weight, their like everything. It just had like this laundry list. It just felt like it was so big and so heavy and intense. And I'm like, well, she's like, but I don't see myself that way. And when we did a little work, this was amazing. She was like, in the conversations, she started to kind of leak out this other info to her own surprise. And she really, at the bottom line, when you peeled all that stuff away, she realized that what she saw was just a lot of darkness and a lot of sadness. And all she wanted was to be comfortable. And how do you become comfortable? Her mom used to take her out for an ice cream. How do you become comfortable? You go to bed. How do you become comfortable? You wrap yourself up in your blankets, even if it's in front of the TV. All right. It was all low energy activity. Okay. And it was a lot of sugar intake in her discussion, which was interesting. Meanwhile, she does all this incredible stuff that like we'd all look at her and go, God, I'd love to, like the way you think is amazing. But in herself, the vision of where she really was at a gut level was very different than where she thought she was. So her habits were based on the real vision that she carried with her all the time, which is life is dark. It's a sad place. I just need to be okay. But she's out there doing like amazing things. She works for a great corporation, like everything's good. So really interesting. That's why I'm like, when you answer the question, how do you see yourself? Just be honest. You're not gonna openly tell everybody what you think. All right, because that's for you. All right. Mental images. This is how our brain works. Okay. Again.
Good question.
Yes. Anything.
So is that a good thing or a positive thing
What do you mean?
for her?
It was a good.
It sounds like it drove her.
Because that was her image. Her image was really pretty dark. So she was just looking ultimately to survive and be safe. Like if you really boil it down. So
And
it
she
was a
ended up
good-
excelling.
yeah, it was bad, really.
Yeah.
Because she was miserable. Like she couldn't understand why at the front she felt and looked great, but when she was alone, she was not really feeling so great. And she was doing things that were counterintuitive to the things that she would otherwise do. So she would go for a
Right.
run and then she'd eat like, a pizza and a bunch of like chips or whatever. And it didn't balance out. And that was her quandary. So she's like, I don't understand why this is happening. Why do I feel like crap all the time? Why is my energy low? It's because in that case, because her mental image, really, that's what she was. So she was driving herself toward her mental image to keep it in place. So that's a bad thing.
Right.
That makes
Got it.
sense? Right?
Yep.
Okay,
How
great.
many people are truly honest with who they really are and how they see themselves? How often does that match?
I have no number, but I will tell you, having worked in the business structure and within like people's personal lives, very often it's not that they're not honest, it's that they have put on so many other things that they're looking at where they are. But then they're like, but my outcome, again, it's I'm doing all this stuff. Why? It's like a person who, I don't know, they are working out all the time, but they never see gains. Well, why is that? So the question is, that's great that you're in the gym all of the time, but what are you doing with the rest of your life? So are you honest that you're in the gym all the time? Yeah, sure. So I don't think that it's people are not honest. I think, Robert, they may be afraid to look a little bit further. Maybe that's the answer.
Or they don't like what they see and they just hide.
Yeah, because it's uncomfortable. No, you're absolutely right. I mean, that's absolutely the truth. It's a scary space. Who wants to
Well-
know that about themselves, especially if like so many of us, we're out there, we're working, we're making it happen. It's great. We have so much to be proud of. And then you're like, yeah, that thing that I'm dragging with me, I don't want to look at that. If I don't look at it, it's not there. Like what my grandmother said, what you don't know doesn't hurt. And maybe that's a part of it. That could be a part of it.
Well, and it's interesting too, that for the example you gave, she drove comfort back to, her mother giving her ice cream.
Right.
And it, that connected it in her brain that's, and food, and there's there's so much to unpack there, right? With being
There
a
is.
child.
There is. And
Yeah.
it's like, and then I have to sit there and go, is ice cream bad? No, right. Because ice cream's not bad.
Right.
But if it's kind of like the gym thing, you go to the gym all the time and then you go home and eating like all this stuff and
Yeah.
conducting yourself that's not in concert with all that effort and time that you put in, forget it, the money, right? There's no balance in it. So I think for people who lose their balance or don't have balance, it's a great thing to look at, like, what are my habits and what do my habits dictate? So it allows us to look at things backwards. Great. This is what I believe, this is what I think, this is what I do. But what keeps happening? Why do I keep doing that thing? Like, what is that? Pardon me, I apologize. So in any case, yeah, but these, like, the comments are so strong because it helps you to figure out what your real habits are and what they're talking to you. That's what it really is. They're talking to you.
A pint of ice cream at one sitting every night is probably bad.
Yeah, a lot of ice cream.
No, a pint.
Well,
Okay.
maybe like a gallon would be bad.
Pint too.
Pint probably is bad. Pardon me. So in any case, mental images. So this is what we do with these mental images. And Robert, what you brought up is really beautiful because this is what our brain does. We go to like basically one of two places. One is, I like that, so I'm going to go do that. So let's say I want to become a runway model. That's fun. Okay, let's say I'm going to go do that because I love that idea. I love walking like this. All right. And I just want to be like this. And that's great. If I decide that I really like that and I really want to go do that, it's like going after a career, same thing. I'll start eating differently. I'll exercise differently. I'll sleep differently. I'll eventually dress differently. I'll find other people that are inside of that circle. I will change my social life. I will be on my way. Will I ever become a runway model? Here's the big news. Probably not. But I'll be on my way and it'll feel really good because I'm in line with that. And the coolest part is that vision will help me to develop new habits. The more you do it, the greater the connections in your brain become, the stronger and more flexible that they become. And the old habits that you have, they kind of, if you will, they atrophy. They're there, which is why old things can come back, but you'll have newer, stronger neural connections. And that makes a big difference. So that's how that works, right? The other thing that we say, and this is the art of neutralization, is we say, well, I do that because that's what I do, or that's what my family does. All right. So I had a whole discussion this morning, and I teach at St. John's University. I teach criminology and Homeland Security courses. And in one of my courses this morning, we talked about this horrific shooting that took place in Kansas, with this young man. His last name is Jarl. And we were talking about this, and people kept bringing up, well, this was an 84-year-old male who he was raised in a different period of time, and maybe lynchings were a normalized part of his world, you know, and maybe that prejudice is so ingrained that he just saw somebody that's black at his doorway and he starts shooting through the door. Like there was no conversation. He just acted, right? That response, those responses, or that type of defense in a discussion is based on thinking, but that's what I do. That's what we do. Well, that's what my family thinks. You know, so that's what we say. I mean, I don't really mean any harm, but that's, except for when you shoot through the door, but that's what we do. That concept will either keep you where you are, it'll intensify your habit of choice, if you will, okay? It'll just keep you there. And the reason is because you have neutralized what it really means. So habits, really on the outside, habits are speaking to us. They're telling us a lot about ourselves. So we don't have to be truthful with ourselves until we listen to what it is that habit is telling us. But if we don't want to make a change for whatever reason, it could purely be socially unacceptable in our sphere. It could be too much work. Maybe you don't have the energy. Maybe there are other things that are more important. And the easiest place to go is, well, because that's what I do. You know, why do you do that? Like a little kid. Why'd you do that? Because that's what I do. They're forming habits. And that's part of what we do, right? So how to break a habit. Let's go there because that's fun. How to break a habit, okay? Let's go back to cigarettes, always an easy one. Somebody smokes, all right? And so what do people say to do? Well, you could just stop, but let's say you're a long-term smoker. Stopping smoking is on the books, it's worse than stopping the use of heroin, all right? Nicotine is really bad. It's very bad, and the withdrawal can make you very sick. And so you have to be a little more careful, especially the older you get. However, this is the way people tell people to stop smoking. You want to stop smoking? Chew gum. It's one of my favorites. Chew gum, you know? You want to stop smoking? You know, have a fidget toy in your hand. Okay, because maybe this is not just oral, maybe this is about moving, right? It doesn't work almost always. And the reason it doesn't work is because you're still sticking something in your mouth. That's what gum is. So you just traded this cigarette for gum. If you stop there, there's a chance that you may go back to smoking at some given point. You have to change what you believe and you have to change what you see. Your brain is seeing, I just need to stick something in my mouth like a cigarette and take a break and breathe this in and whatever. Okay, that's why people often return. Okay, here's a fidget toy. You know, you're not going to sit in a board meeting with a fidget toy, but the minute you get out of there, you're going to want a cigarette possibly. You know, so There's a lot to this. It's all about what our brain is seeing and how it's processing. So it's like the thing I've told you about before, biting your nails. People go, how do you stop biting your nails? Well, you stop biting your nails by you use that stuff, or maybe put like spices on your fingers, or maybe sit on your hands. No, the only way to stop biting your nails is to keep your hands out of your mouth. It's an entirely different message. It's entirely different. So all of those other messages say, well, when you stick your hands in your mouth, you'll be burned because there's cayenne pepper in your mouth because it was on your hands. You're still sticking your hands in your mouth. So the question is to break a habit. How do you really break it? It's to get 180 as far away as you can from that habit in your head. You don't like to exercise, you hate it, whatever it is, you don't want to take a walk, you're too tired. It's, I really don't want to take a walk. It's, I'm taking a walk. So I want you to stop for 1 second. I want you to think about this. Think about something you really don't like to do. Okay. And think about like how much you don't like it. And just quickly tell me, what is the emotional register to that? How does it feel when you think about that thing that you really don't like doing? Just throw out a couple of
Dread.
words. Dread. Great. What else?
When my wife drags me to Michael's.
What does it feel? What is
Can't
it?
stand it.
Okay. You can't stand it, right? So what's the emotion to that?
Bored, long lines. It smells the same way all the time. There's just
It's
everything's
such a
on
creative place,
everything's
though.
on
Yes.
overload. It's overload in there.
Overload. Right. So think about this. So you've got like bored, overload, right? Pam, what did you say? I just totally lost it. What'd you say?
And
I
I
said
can never
it's-
find
oh.
anything in there. I can't find anything in there.
There's so many creative possibilities. It's, for me, it's like walking into a gourmet grocery store. The creative possibilities are endless. I get very excited in those kinds of places.
Pam
I
and
won't
Lee,
invite
too.
you.
don't go. It's we'll be picking them up off the floor. But Pam, what word did you say before? I'm sorry.
Dread.
That's right. Thank you. All right. Somebody else. Give me two more.
Exhaustion.
Okay, great. Thanks. Anybody else? Think of like, what does it feel to think about like something you really don't like to do?
Anxiety.
Great. Thanks. All right. So now what I want you to do, I want you to flip this 180 degrees away. I want you to think about something you really like to do, like really like it right away. What's the first emotion you've got?
Satisfaction.
Great. Somebody else.
Excitement.
Happy.
Joy.
Joy. Or happy, joy, joy.
I was just going to say happy, joy, joy. I'm not doing that dance right now. I'm just saying. Right. But I do have Ren and Stimpy like toys in my closet. Right. I do. It's true. So in any case, all right. So I want you to listen to this. In a heartbeat, we went from dread, exhaustion, overload, boredom, anxiety. And like this, it was satisfaction, excitement, happy, and joy times 2. Your brain moves that fast. So when your head is starting to engage in a habit that you don't like, you go, I'm doing a 180. And the thing about doing a 180 is sometimes you have to fake it till you make it. That's the truth. I will never lie about this. So it's not like, I hate meatloaf. And let's say I had to go to somebody's house and they were serving that. To just eat that would almost kill me. But I would have to find a reason why that is more important than what I feel. So you know what? It's, I hate this. I hate this. The more I think it, the worse it's getting. There's no way to eat it. But if I think, you know what? If I say I love meatloaf, it's such a bad lie. There's nowhere to go. So maybe it's not 180 degrees away. Maybe it's 160 degrees. I love Joan so much. I want her to be happy. No problem eating this because now I'm eating it because I love my friend who makes a loaf of meat. Ugh. All right. So you see what I'm saying though? You can switch it. And the more, and as much as I may not like eating meatloaf and I'm eating it, I have to stop and think, God, she looks so satisfied. It's so nice that she took the time out to do this. I'm so glad we're together. that this, all of a sudden, the meatloaf is there's nothing left. It's a non sequitur. Nothing matters. It's not about
So-
meatloaf anymore.
So positive mental attitude can really change your life.
Yep, but it's also what you're seeing in your head. So you can run around, and I was just about to talk about this, like positive affirmations and all this stuff. But if that's not what you really see, you can do that till the cows come home. It's what are you saying to yourself that you want to have put in place? Think about your career paths. Think about maybe your home or your partners or your car or your socks, whatever you wanted in your lifetime. How did you get there? You said, you know, I'm gonna go do that. And when everybody around you said you can't do that, maybe you went and did that anyway. Why? It wasn't just your mental attitude. It's that you had to be going towards something that you were seeing. So it's a little bit more than just your attitude, right? Because your attitude, it's like the habit thing. You can end up being derailed because it's not really what you see. So you have to like define, where do you want to go? That's why some people say, write it down, because you can revisit it. I mean, it's up to you. It's about the
But
vision.
I deal with this in relationships. It's a mindset, and having a mindset, understanding the other person as well as your beliefs and understanding. So it kind of is a battle sometimes. Where's the compromise? Where's the middle ground to live a peaceful, happy, joy life?
It's exactly right. So, let's say it's like a thing between partners, it could be business partners, it could be partners at home, and you would like this to work better. Here, this is perfect. So I've worked with people where not only can't they stand each other, you'll have one partner who can't stand the smell of the other person. So it's like the anti, pheromone issue, right? It's like, ugh, terrible. They can't even be in the same room because there's something in the air. They just can't do it. I've worked with people where they end up falling in love again, and it's like a whole new romance and a whole new adventure. Well, the question is, how do you do that? And what you do is you use the chemistry in your head. So how did you feel years ago when you were, I don't know, 23, and you would wait all day for that phone call, and then you're on the phone? What happened? We're on the phone all night, right? And I don't want to get too far off the habit trail, if you will, but that you're using your brain chemistry to make something happen. And I'm not saying stay with people that are bad for you, but I'm saying if that's what people want, there's literally a way to do it, and it works. It's unbelievable to watch it work, but it's an investment, just like a habit. It's development. You have to work it through. It has to be deliberate. Okay. So we've got all of this. The next question is, because I want to watch my time. Hey, Lane, how are we doing on time?
We're good. Well, you usually go for 45 minutes, right?
Yes.
Yes, we are at 109.
Good. I just want to make sure, because last time I ran over. All right. So the other thing is this: how to create a habit. This is like my favorite things. So we just talked about how to break a habit. Oh my God, it's the same thing. It's the same thing. Just do it for the good. So if you're working your way, if you have habits that are not good, it tells you that you're working your way toward a vision that's not good. So you want to create some good habits? What good do you want? What do you want to have happen? You want to change something in your life that you do habitually, or you want to just create a brand new habit out of the blue? Figure out what it is that you're working toward. That will help you give what Robert is calling like a good mental attitude, because it'll set you into place on a path with a direction. You're not aimless. Okay, so to create a habit, you can't be aimless. You have to choose a thing. You have to choose a scenario. And then that habit will help you to get to wherever you're going. The more you do that one thing, whatever that one thing is, that one thing will become a habit. Okay? So you're looking to figure something out. You want to establish that that's what you want in your life, and you're going to go do it. And the key here is repetition, because repetition is what causes your brain to create stronger neural connections about that item or that issue, and that becomes your default. That is a black and white science. It's not, in some kind of strange context. It's not a theory. It's not like, it's like just do this. It's, visualize your place in Maui and you're there in a week. Not how it works. All right. To get the place in Maui, something has to happen. Somebody has to make a phone call. You have to be on a path. Okay. To create a new habit, you have to establish that you want to do that thing and you're going to invest in a way that allows you to do it over and over and over. And that's what you're going to do. So if you want to, I don't know, exercise more in the morning because you generally don't, and you want to change the way your life goes, and that's your new approach, your investment is also going to include probably something like going to bed earlier generally in the previous evening, or not drinking any caffeine after, say, 2 p.m. or whatever it is. It's an actual investment. It's like what you do with your money. It's like what you do with other resources. You have to use your resources to develop a habit. It's very important, right? And this goes as far as things like self-esteem. Maybe somebody has a habit where they really don't feel so great about themselves enough. Some people, they feel pretty good, and at times they don't feel so good about themselves. They're self-doubting, et cetera, et cetera. Question is, how do you change that habit? How do you stop beating yourself up? How do you stop making yourself your best victim? Well, maybe if you thought about the fact that a victim is somebody, this is the actual criteria to become a victim, right? That there's emotional, psychological, economic, or physical harm or loss. That's what qualifies somebody as a victim. If that's what you want to be, keep it up. But if you don't want to be a victim, according to that criteria, then stop beating yourself up, because that self-harm, it's not doing anything good, and it doesn't get you to feel better. It makes you feel worse. So the way to create a habit is exactly like breaking a habit, but for the good. Does that make sense? You're using the same methods. You have something visual in place. You have like that vision. Okay. You have that story. You want to put yourself on that path. And if there's something that you want to do over and over again, because that'll help you, then get on the path to do it and do it over and over and over. And that's literally how you form a habit. All right. And it'll take approximately 3 months, maybe a little bit over. For some people, it takes less time. And for some people, it takes longer. And that's okay. Just stick to it. Just stick with it. Any questions before I jump into this other thing about this? No, we're good. All right. I want to talk about self-affirmations for a minute, because they play a role and it's really interesting. All right. So self-affirmations, daily devotions, things like that. People do it every single day. Why do they do that? They do that because it sets themselves up to feel better. It's like what Lane said. You spend some time minutely in a positive place. Generally speaking, as long as your head is taking that in, you just innately feel better. So if you wake up every morning, if you look at like TikTok and all these other platforms, they have all these little kids and adults saying, I am important, I am this, I am that, I am powerful, and you hear these kids, and people are doing this with their children to help build their children up. You have classrooms of children where they're literally kind of chanting this together every day or every Wednesday or whatever it is. Why? Because somebody's helping them to develop a habit of knowing that they're valuable. So they're returning to that message constantly, but it's a daily, consistent reminder. All right. What's interesting about these affirmations or devotions is that, clinically speaking, they decrease stress. This is amazing. This is all based on research. So these affirmations, they decrease stress, they increase well-being, they improve performance. Now, what they spoke about, a couple of studies that I read, it was more about academic performance, but it's really across the board, which is really pretty fascinating. Okay. It increases self-worth. And what I love is that it increases hope for future improvement or for a future possibility. I mean, imagine that. So you're doing something that's positive for you and you establish that as a habit. It decreases so many things that people struggle with and increases stuff that people really hope to have. It's amazing. Why? Because that's how your head works. That's really just how your head works. All right. So the brain is doing what the brain does. And you have to trust, unless you have some type of brain damage, that you're good. And you've got the equipment to do what you need to do. But you have to feed information okay, which includes environment. Okay, you have to feed your brain that material in order to have the right ROI. You know, you don't go into a business hoping it fails unless there's a reason to do that, by the way. Right? So think about it. You're putting the right stuff in to get the right stuff out. So if you want to develop habits that work for you, it means that you're putting something in and you're going to repeat it over and over until it just becomes rote, because that'll take you to the right place, which is pretty amazing. All right. And again, it's not easy, but it's very, very doable. And people do it every day and they do it often. All right. So I want to talk about Stephen Covey for a minute. A lot of people know his books. And one of the biggest books was The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. All right. I want to read, if you don't mind, so sorry that my head will be down a bit, but I want to read to you basically what these 7 habits are, just in a nutshell. All right. Habit 1, be proactive, which is you're in charge. That's what that says. Habit 2 is begin with the end in mind. So that means have a plan. What does that mean? Look to the future. What do you see? Where are you going? Okay. Habit 3, put first things first. He says, work first, then play. What he's really saying is prioritize. Okay. Put the right stuff in place so that it's going to work for you in the long run. Then habit 4 is think win-win, that everybody could win. That's part of the moniker of V50. This is all about everybody wins. It's not one large company. It's going to absorb a bunch of people. Good for you. And we're going to keep growing on your backs. It's about win-win. Habit 5 is seek first to understand, then be understood. What that means is listen before you talk. Just listen before you talk. Number 6, synergize, meaning that together is better. And number 7 is sharpen the saw, which means balance feels the best. Don't go in with a dull tool. Don't go in with something that's half-baked. Go in and just do it with the best that you've got. Those are his 7 habits. And if you look at that or you listen to what I just said, the whole entire thing is based on you need to have a vision. And then you need to make sure that you put the right things in place so that your brain can do its job easily. And where you have a fight, do that 180, 160, 140, whatever it is that you need to do. And you do that over and over and over. And one day you wake up and you realize that it's not a big deal anymore. And you don't even have to work at it. And maybe you actually love it. And that other thing that kept you down, it's a non-issue because it's in the back. It's on the back shelf. And if it gets triggered back into place, you quickly go and you go, nope, I like that better thing that I do. That better habit, that's my game. And weirdly, the bad habit just goes away again. It's a very strange experience and it happens to people all over every day. That's really it. So that is the whole thing. So if I handed you a homework assignment, right, that's become part of our thing. What I'd ask you to do is I want you to establish a vision for yourself. It doesn't have to be big, it could be small, that's really up to you. But establish a vision for yourself and I want you to act upon it. Either work to break a habit or work to develop a habit. But make sure that you have something in front of you, because if that habit is not connected to something, it's not on the path to something, you're going to end up spinning your wheels and the old stuff is just going to stay in place.
Amen.
That's it.
Amen.
That's it, guys. That's what I've got. Any questions? Comments? Sarcastic comments? Oh,
Love it.
okay, good.
Yeah,
Yeah.
no, time well spent.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Yeah, this was great. It's great to go over. So thank you. It's really a gift. Randy.
Attitudes are contagious and yours is worth catching.
Oh, Randy, that's amazing. Thank you. That's great.
You're
Thanks.
welcome.
Now you have that tattooed on my forehead and walk around with it.
For you.
That's great. Thank you. That's terrific. That's wonderful. Thanks.
4
Anybody-
pages of notes.
There's notes. I know. By the way, just to let you know, I'm about to launch a podcast. So, I can get that information over to Lane. Obviously, I'm not going to throw that all over the place. It's not my place to do that. But I am about to launch this podcast. It should be a lot of fun, actually.
We
A lot
like
of
to
things.
promote
Very
a few
exciting.
things here and there, so shouldn't be a problem getting that promoted and getting you a bunch of subscribers.
Thank you. That'd be awesome. Thanks. Because I'm good at the content. Don't ask me to market. I'm just like, whatever.
Yeah, can't
All right.
wait.
Thank you. That's great. Yeah, it was fun doing the first one. It's called The Carp, like the fish. And I explain it in the podcast. Because God forbid I just call it, hey, speaking with Dr. Maida or Allyson or whatever we call it. So in any case, all right. I hope that everybody has a really great, day. Certainly, I look forward to seeing everybody here again in about a month. And it'll be really cool to talk about these visions, but take a look, by the way, at those 3 words you wrote down and ask yourself if any of your habits are based on that, or did your habits lead you there? And if it's not something you want, let's see if we can get yourself to change those words. Right? Almost forgot that. Thank you.
Dr. Allison.
Thank you.
Yeah,
Much.
it was
Thank
very
you
good.
Thank you very
much.
much.